We're here once again on the shores of Mirror Lake, just outside of Anchorage, Alaska. And today on The Truth in Love, we're going to be discussing the question about why evil exists. Why do bad things happen to people? And what does that have to say about whether or not God exists? Dr. Brad Harrub is with us on the program today, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
There's a message true and glad for the sinful and the sad. Ring it out, ring it out, ring it out. It will give them courage new, it will help them to be true. Ring it out, ring it out, ring it out, ring it out.
Ring out,
merrily ring,
the word,
speeding away,
or man,
message divine,
and see.
send it today.
Still far from Jesus, many live in sin.
Lost and those in doubt, darkness and doubt.
Welcome to The Truth in Love. We're continuing our series of lessons on Christian apologetics, and we're glad to have Dr. Brad Harrub with us again on the program. Brad holds a PhD degree in neurobiology and anatomy from the University of Tennessee, and he is well qualified to talk about matters that relate to the existence of God and Christian apologetics. And we began on last time's program the discussion of some of the evidences for the existence of God. We talked about the cosmological argument, which is the law of cause and effect. For every effect, there must be an adequate cause. Well, the universe is here. What or who caused it to be here? We talked about that. We talked about design and a lot of the evidence for design in the human body, in the universe, and how design demands a designer. We talked a little bit about the moral argument, the moral faculty of man, and how that speaks to the existence of one who created that within us. And today we're going to talk about the atheists' sugar stick argument, that I like to call it. It's their best argument. It doesn't hold water when it's put to scrutiny, but it is the best one that they have and one that they like to use. And it has to do with that question that everyone at some point in his or her life has asked, and it's that question, why? Why do bad things happen? Let me read just a passage from the scripture that illustrates that. Gideon was one of the judges, and the people of Israel were suffering at the hands of the Midianites and suffering severely. And when the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon to call him to action, his question was very simple. He said, "O my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us?" And people that suffer from cancer, people that have had loved ones that have been killed in tragic car accidents, you name it. People have that question, why? If God exists, and God is all loving, and God is all powerful, then why
does he allow this?
Why does he allow that to happen?
You know, from Gideon to us today, people have been asking the question, why me, God? Or why is he allowing this to happen to me? You know, we think about tragedies such as the World Trade Center, the two towers falling to the ground, people on the streets hollering out, why is God, where's God during times like this? Why is he allowing things like this to happen? And, you know, it sounds from the outside perspective like a great question about the existence of God. You know, if there really is a God, then why is he allowing this to happen? Evolutionists like to paint it this way. They'll often say, if God is a loving God, then why doesn't he stop it? Because after all, if he's all powerful, he should be able to stop it. And if he's not able to stop it, then that would obviously prove he's not all powerful. If he can stop it but don't, then that means he's not all good. And so, you know, they've well tuned their argument in order to try to place seeds of doubt in the hearts and the minds of people. And a lot of times these seeds of doubt take root at the very worst possible time, and that is when somebody is suffering from a tragedy.
Yeah, and you know, the basic argument is that if the God as the Bible presents him exists, then there's no way to explain why evil happens, why there are bad things that do happen.
Yeah.
And I know you're going to talk about some reasons why evil happens.
Yeah,
why bad
I want
things
us to
happen.
look at 6 reasons why God allows evil, pain, and suffering.
Yeah, and one of the things that before we get into that that kind of goes back a little bit to what we talked about in the previous program on the morality of man.
Yes.
One of the things that the atheist has to consider in even making that argument is when he states that evil things happen, he's automatically assuming
Evil exists.
that there is some standard that has been violated,
Yeah.
that constitutes the evil.
That's right.
Now, what standard is that?
Exactly.
And if the atheist can't answer that, then he's got a problem.
Yeah, ultimately, who decides what is right and wrong, what is good and evil? Either we've adopted man's standard, which would be chaos, or we've adopted God's standard.
Yeah. So let's. Why don't you talk about some of these reasons that help to explain why bad things do happen?
I want you to think about these 6 reasons. Anytime you, your neighbors, your coworkers are struggling, if you have death in the family, if illness strikes, and you're really questioning the existence of God, think about these 6 reasons why He does allow suffering. First one is some of the suffering that we have today is actually a result of past generations. My generation, we are great at trying to blame the responsibility on somebody else. Well, this one instance we can do that. If you think about the fact that past generations, we didn't know that things like Agent Orange or lead paint or asbestos, DDT, that some of these things were extremely harmful for the human body. In fact, we used to experiment using a drug called thalidomide on pregnant females in order to try to cure morning sickness. Now, it did a pretty good job of curing morning sickness, but it also mutated the DNA in human beings. And so a lot of the suffering that we see today, some of the cancer, some of the sicknesses, some of the death that we have around us is actually a result of previous generations. The ultimate example of that would be Adam and Eve.
Yeah, a lot of the things that we have to face today environmentally have to do with the existence of sin and,
That's right.
and things that sin has caused. You think about just on a more immediate level, as far as decisions that other people make that cause suffering.
Yes.
There are infants that are born into the world addicted to drugs.
That's right.
Through no choice of their own, but because someone else had the freedom to choose and chose to use that freedom in an irresponsible way.
Yeah, and that's 2 things we need to make sure that everybody out there understands clearly. In talking about evil, pain, and suffering, always remember that God has created man with free will. He could have made each and every one of us automatrons. He could have forced mankind to worship Him. But He wanted people who chose to worship Him. And so He gave everybody free will. The second thing that we have to remember is that God is not a respecter of persons. The Bible tells us very clearly He makes the rain to fall on the fields of the just and the unjust. And so as we're talking about some of these reasons that He allows evil, pain, and suffering, keep those 2 points in mind. They're going to be very important as you understand what is happening to you or maybe your family in your life right now.
Yeah, it's really one of the characteristics of God that's brought into this argument is his loving nature, and that's really an outgrowth of God's love.
Yes, it is.
The fact that He did create us and give us the ability, the freedom to choose.
Yep.
But with the freedom to choose comes responsibility, and if we misuse that, it can bring suffering not only into our lives but into the lives of others. If I choose to drink alcohol and get out on the road and drive, I may crash my car into someone and cause them a lot of pain and suffering through no fault of their own, but because I misused my freedom of choice.
That's right. Hey, when you think about the World Trade Centers, everybody that boarded those planes woke up that morning with the freedom to choose what they wanted to do, with free will, both the terrorists and those innocent victims. And so, God created all of mankind with the ability to wake up each day and make the choice of what we're going to do.
Yeah, and if I commit murder and get put on death row, whose fault is that?
Right, and that brings us to the second one, the second reason that we have evil, pain, and suffering